Imagine, if you will, a universe that holds only a small group of planets, each planet a barren shell waiting to be given life. Imagine further that within this universe there exists the forces of good and evil. Having only a single starbase to work from, you set out in ships of your own design and use them to colonize the barren planets. Strategies are needed to meet the many challenges you will face as you strive to become a great leader. Farms need to be established to feed your growing populace. Taxes have to be imposed to raise money to build a stunning array of equipment, from a spy satellite to a hydroponic planet. Even while you are establishing that delicate balance called life, a fiendish dictator is gazing at the whole universe with greedy eyes. His schemes to conquer and control. Confrontation is inevitable. This, viewers, is Overlord from Probe Software and Virgin Interactive, released in 1993, very late in the good old NES lifespan. It was designed by David Perry and Nick Brutti and produced by Probe. The game was initially released for the Amiga and the Atari ST in the beginning of 1990, and later in the same year it was ported to the Commodore 64. But released only in the very beginning of 91. Nearly 1 year later, in late 1991, the game was finally ported to DOS. I could see this game working very well on DOS. The game was ported to the NES in 1993, and the NES cartridge has an internal battery to retain save games. The computer version came on 2 discs. The NES version was among the last titles released for the platform and is relatively rare. The NES version also is noted for having very few sounds or music, mainly just the title theme, composed by Jeroen Tel. That's 2 words, Jeroen Tel. The role of Supremacy, as it was called initially, is to create and protect a network of planetary colonies and defeat a computer adversary who is trying to do the same. There are 4 skill levels, each represented by an enemy race, and each featuring a progressively stronger opponent. The more advanced a system is, the more freedom a player has when purchasing spacecraft. Higher skill levels also result in different numbers of planets in each system. The game is controlled using a mouse pointer, and important information is displayed in a message box at the bottom of most screens. Following the introduction screen, the player chooses which planetary system to enter. Planetary systems differ in the number of planets they contain, the types of spacecraft and equipment that can be purchased, and the strength and aggressiveness of the artificial intelligence. The first system contains 8 worlds and allows access to only the most basic equipment. The second system has 16 planets and slightly better equipment, and the remaining systems increase in size and strength similarly. The player and his opponent both begin with control over a single colonized planet in the chosen system. All other planets in between are uninhabited and up for grabs. The player must then set up and maintain thriving colonies on as many planets as possible and build up an industry and military strong enough to fend off the opponent. Because of the randomness of a system's initial makeup, the order in which planets are colonized has great subsequent effect upon gameplay. Before building a colony, planets need to be first terraformed using an atmospheric processor. As the planet's population grows, more taxes can be sent to a player's home starbase. However, in order to survive, colonies need to be supplied with food and energy. The player provides food by buying and placing farming stations on the colony, or by transferring them on starships as cargo. Energy comes from purchasing orbiting solar satellites, but can also be transferred as cargo. Cargo shipments consume fuel, so the player needs to also purchase mining stations. Balancing these and similar factors constitutes the main challenge of the game. As the player expands his or her empire, he must also create planetary defenses. Defense is achieved by building and maintaining defensive ground armaments on a world. The ability to attack comes from purchasing a battle cruiser and arming it with combinations of both homing and ballistic missiles and hover tanks, then sending the ship to attack an enemy's planet's defenses. Planets are taken by eliminating all ground defense on an enemy world. The only way to win control over a system is to attack and conquer the enemy starbase in that system. The only way to beat the game is to take the starbase of the last system, Yotsu. Likewise, if the player's home starbase is defeated, the game ends and the player loses. The NES version could be considered an early example of a real-time strategy, allowing direct control over missile launch and hover tanks, one on the map at any given time, by the way, on the offensive side. while offering direct control over the plasma cannon defense base and partial control over the pom-pom cannon and lightning field defense bases. The MS-DOS version did not have these units, and so could only be remotely considered for this classification. The NES port of the earlier is a port, of the earlier computer versions. However, there are several differences. The NES uses fewer screens than the home computer counterparts, even fewer sounds, and much simplified controls. While the original game uses units of soldiers and platoons, which were upgradable, the NES game condensed the battle elements to missiles and hover tanks against ground, none of which can be upgraded. The message area is much larger than the other versions and placed along the right-hand side of the screen compared to the bottom center of the NES game. The NES game allows a single save to be stored, compared up to 4 on the home computer system. And in the NES version, only credits are required to buy a craft, where the original version required players to spend money, minerals, fuel, and energy, though this varies depending on the difficulty level. Finally, the use of the docking bays is more complex than the other games. And the other versions have a feature where an image of the face of the enemy grows clearer the closer the player is to defeating the game. The main theme, composed by Jaron Tell, is recognized as one of the best SID music compositions ever made, reaching the 52nd spot among the 30,000 entries in the High Voltage SID collection. Flying Omelette gave the NES version a rating of 2 out of 10 stars, saying, "It isn't often that a game comes along that challenges my notions of just how bad a game can really be. What appeared to be a very promising situation and strategy game for the NES ends up being a complete disaster, due to the many elements that are all working against you, all at once and much too quickly." My only problem with Overlord here is that I'm pretty sure you need the manual to figure out what the hell you're doing, because there's nothing in the game to tell you what's going on. Is it a bad game? I can't say. Is it a good game? I can't say. One person gave it 3 out of 10. 10 more people gave it a 5.6 out of 10. I couldn't figure it out well enough to give you a good rating.